Hey friends, the cost of being a disciple has always been significant, but the blessing of being a disciple, we are told, outweighs it eternally. That can be used sometimes as a bit of a hammer to say, well, the things that you're going through right now, the suffering, the difficulty, the hardship, the doubt, the pain, the sorrow, those things really don't matter in the long run. In the long run, you're just going to be in heaven. And I've heard people talk about it like that. Like, why are people worried about the pain that they're experiencing now? They should be worried about the eternal pain or eternal glory and that kind of stuff. And look, there's lots of writing throughout history that talks about that. And it is useful to have an eternal perspective. It does say that God has set eternity in the hearts of humans. So there's something there. But the reality is that in this veil of sorrows, in this world, the only reality that we know here and now, we do experience pain. We do experience sorrow and suffering, and those things are real. And the more we attempt to follow in the footsteps of the one who is described as the man acquainted with sorrows, the more we're going to experience that. Now, I don't think that just because you experience suffering or hardship or people hate you, it means that you're being a good disciple. Sometimes it just means you're being a jerk, or sometimes it means that, there's just unlucky things that happen, or we just live in a world where hard things occur. But the truth is, when you are really trying to follow in the footsteps of Jesus, you are invited into a life that is familiar with poverty of spirit, and that is able even to see it as a blessing. You are invited into a life that is familiar with mourning, and is able to experience it as a blessing. You are invited into a life of meekness and are able to receive it as a blessing. You're invited into a life of mercy and are able to see it as a blessing. You're invited into a life of hungering and thirsting after righteousness and justice and are able to receive that hungering and thirsting, which means there's something that is almost, it's not lacking, but it's like you're hungry for, you want, there's something you see that there's more. There's a lack of satisfaction in some sense. But even that, there's a blessing. You were called, you were invited into a life of purity of heart in a world of terrible impurity. And you're able to receive that as a blessing. You're invited into a life as a peacemaker. And I actually consider that to be the real calling, is into the life of peacemaking, because that's what it means to be a son and a daughter of God, those who make peace. And you can receive it as a blessing, but the logical end or result of peacemaking does end up being in a place of persecution, because there are people and also powers and principalities that are opposed to peace in our world, opposed to reconciliation, opposed to goodness and wholeness and hope and beauty and love. Those powers exist. And there are people who are unfortunately trapped in those kind of powers. And so when you have received the invitation into being a peacemaker, it's going to be a cost. There's a cost to that. And we can even receive that as a blessing. And I can tell you from personal experience, that is not easy. But it is the deepest invitation into the life of Christ that we know. So if you're going through that right now, do be encouraged, not just because, well, one day you'll die and you'll get to be in glory. Be encouraged because you have been invited to share the sufferings of Christ and the sufferings of the world in a very profound way. It's not just the way that we grow, though we do grow that way. It is also the way that we are shaped and formed more deeply into the kind of people we were made to be. So we don't diminish it at all. We say it's real, the costs are real, but the blessings are also real here and now. And one of the ways that we experience those blessings is in community, where we recognize the suffering and the cost that other people are enduring. And we say, let us walk along with you. As one of my favorite literary characters of all time, Samwise Gamgee, says, I can't carry the ring for you, but I can carry you. So sometimes we need to carry one another in the midst of those costs, and then allow ourselves to be carried as well when we're experiencing the cost. So just a little on the cost of being a disciple, that it's real, that we can still lament it and mourn it, but we can also receive the blessing of it. I hope you are receiving a blessing today.